Alright, context video for Vloggerdome. These are always a little tricky because the idea is to emphasize the elements of existence, the key components that are the context to every conversation. So the idea of evolution, the idea of where we came from and our origins are always important in reflecting on what's happening to us and where we're going. And it's a way of knocking down any inclination to get lofty in terms of high ambitions, because it's a crude mechanism at its core, and our functionality is built out of that. So the Modern Mystic made a video called Level 3. I'll post a link anyway, and it's he's just arguing through the fact that we have a brain and this is what it's doing. Okay, so the context to his video would be, the context I would add is that yes, evolution's created this mechanism that creates behavior. That's what a central nervous system is for, is creating behavior. And the behavior is, in the end, conducive to survival in these complex environments where you have to extract your food through layers of the biosphere, the highest levels of the biosphere. There's all kinds of elements of the biosphere you're interacting with and you have to survive in, and there's all kinds of rich competition for those resources. And so we have this scheming brain, essentially, as its primary function, perhaps, or motivational brain is the, you can fight between which one is the owner. I'd say obviously the motivational thing comes first, the hunger, the drives, the motivating feelings. And so that's the whole key word here, is a feeling. It creates this sensation of desire, motivation, sensation that are tied, correlated to stuff in the world. We have a reaction to a hat, or we have a reaction to all kinds of structures that create an emotional response in us. And that's basically the purpose of the mechanism, is to create these motivational, emotional responses that compel us to fight or flight or fuck or feed, one of these things. And so that's the basic core of the mechanism. But what is it, how is it, and what do we call it, is sort of his conversation. And it's sort of getting to this core thing, what is does it have any realness to it? Or is this all synthetic? I'm going to argue that there's a reality to it, that it is a functioning machine. I was thinking of drawing a picture of it, but I really don't want to have to go there, so just use your imagination. But let's take a blank slate and say, what is the brain? Well, the first thing is, let's take colored pencils and just take some colors and bleed through evolution a disposition into this thing, a bit of swirl of color, some red and blue and green swirling in this little node of complexity. That's what evolution gives us. So it gives us this capacity to feel, to have these sensations, and some of these sensations at their core are very crudely defined. I mean, they're hardware reactions that they can be nuanced, but they have a core function. The core function obviously is consuming food and the replication thing, and these are the primary functions of the biological organism, is acquire resources to make a copy. Okay, that's the primary function, is the replication. The replication necessitates the acquisition of parts to make the new thing, the copy. And that's the basic mechanic revealed in this mechanism. Now we have this other component, which is the nuancing of it. Okay, so now we have this thing called the psychology and this conditioning, and now it's doing all this pattern recognition, and it's associating different things with different responses, and those responses and those mechanisms are reinforced. The conditioning is reinforced, and then you become reactionary. You become like throwing a baseball. You become muscle memory controlled. You can't not throw the baseball correctly anymore. There's a point where you can't throw it wrong. There's a point where you know 2 + 2 = 4. You can't unknow it. The body sort of works the same way, the brain, in terms of how it functions. So now you have this mixture of this idea of perception, the thing you're seeing, your senses are collecting data, and then your brain throws in another a nuanced perception of it, another version of that with this more color added. And so we have this extra color now that comes out of culture. Our culture conditions us. Then people write books, and those influences create more associations and create more nuance in the coloring and the swirling of this thing called the consciousness. But what is the real interaction is this feedback mechanism, this idea of taking what comes in, creating a reflexive response, like throwing a baseball. Your brain throws a baseball into the arena. Now you see the baseball that your brain created coming at you, and you swing at that. And that in turn creates another phenomenon that you witness. And so it's like the narrative is, reality is augmented by your perception, and then you perceive your creation on top of it, your fear, your anxiety, your worry, your concern. All those things are thrown in front of you, and now you have a new challenge to face, is this world now with your new, like Frankensteins that you create in the environment itself. So the environment is this thing, and now you put new entities in the thing called fear and worry and concern and anxiety, hope, wish, ambition, greed, gluttony, all these different little emotional crap, these monsters that you have to navigate and have interaction with. And in the new version of reality. So the new version of reality has your worry put into it, your angst, your ambition, your desire, your frustration, your anger, whatever the thing is that's rolling around inside of your psychology. Now the mystic would say, I would say that now we have this picture, right? You have a picture of a circle with all this swirly stuff in it. Each individual is going to have different swirly stuff, because they're going to make different associations. They're going to have different worries, different fears, not substantially different, maybe sometimes substantial, but in a lot of ways just nuanced. One man likes sushi, one man likes steak, that kind of nonsense. So there's going to be different monsters that each brain is going to create in their field, in their brain space of their reality, and they're going to be interacting with a different battlefield, and they're going to see the need to use different kinds of weapons and different kinds of approaches and have different demeanors to navigate. They're going to think certain keys open certain doors. If I'm nice to them and I say, oh, how lovely your hair is, I'll use that key to manipulate that person to get through that door. You know, they play the game differently, but it's a strategy game. It's a game, and some of it is you do it based on your intuition, and some of it you do based on your knowledge. You know, some of it's I've thrown the baseball so many times I can throw it without thinking about it, and sometimes you're thinking about it. You're saying, no, I want to throw a particular kind of curveball, and I want to throw a little knuckly curve, and so then you're nuancing it with something else that you've learned that might work. You know, modifying the key, change the strategy a little bit. Maybe do a little complimenting, or put a little edge on it so you don't seem like it's a lie. Make it sound like it's not a lie, but because you're adding a little harshness that will make them think that, oh yeah, he couldn't have done that on purpose. But it's still manipulation. You're still playing their psychology. You're still just playing with your keys. Anyway, so the mystic argues in his video, in kind of an empty, vague kind of way, that there is no thing. So I'm saying this swirly thing, this circle of complexity, is a thing. You can call it a thing. There's no point in saying it's not a thing. An individual. It's an individual. I'm an individual. My brain is the maker of the story. It creates the projection. Yes, the projection is made out of all parts of the universe in all its other branches created it, but it is the device, creates the theater, creates the projection. So this is a projector, and we can identify each projector by a unique name, because each projector is projecting a different kind of crap, because it has a different kind of programming, a different kind of swirling that's going on. And there's just no crime in acknowledging that. The fact that they're all made out of exactly the same crap, the same thing called experience and and conditioning and nature, and the same components go into each one, doesn't mean that they're not still individuals, and that each individual creates this thing called a consciousness. The consciousness isn't shared by them. It's only shared in the sense that they have the same sort of mechanism of consciousness, but that's as far as the similarity goes. So there's no problem calling this an I or a me, giving it a name, saying this is a unique snowflake. Yeah, they're all snowflakes, but there's no point in not identifying when you can. There's not so many of us that we can't do that. And acknowledge that each device creates the syndrome of consciousness. The sensations are created inside this thing, inside this brain, when it's turned on and functioning properly. It's not universal echoes, it's not coming from the ground. It's just a projector that only runs when it's put together just right, and the light flashes and it does its flip, and the images is thrown inside the brain, and it happens. And I don't see any point in disregarding that and saying it isn't real. No, it's a real. Look at all the colors and all the swirls and all this. There's real shit happening here. It's a real product of real complexity, and I don't see any reason to deny what it appears to be. It has every appearance of being something that's different than non-projection. This projection thing, this consciousness thing, even if it is all just some sort of internal swirl, is doing it differently than all the others swirl. It's different. I know there's a difference between whatever, this and this. And it doesn't matter how I can make this really complex, but until I turn it on, make it a consciousness and turn it on, it's nothing. It's just, matter molecules next to each other. So I just don't see the applicability of this denial of the fact that, a lens can focus light, and different machines, different arrangements of matter can create phenomenon. A transformer can create a magnetic field. Different things can create a phenomenon, and our brain's phenomenoning. There's no reason to deny it, that functionality, in my opinion. It's just, there's no, it's not logically sensible, especially since you experience it. Like I said, how could I take it? How can I sit there and witness the projection? And again, that's an important argument here, is that your consciousness does nothing. Your consciousness is the vehicle through which your motivational brain communicates with your thinking brain. Reason and motivation communicate through consciousness, but nothing that either one produces is produced in consciousness. It's all produced in your subconscious. Your subconscious creates the feelings, your subconscious creates the understanding, the thoughts, the sentences, the coherent word play, and your consciousness just sits here and witnesses it. It's just the vehicle that these two things are poured into the beaker, and inside the beaker the nylon is formed. That might be a good analogy, right? Nylon, you mix two liquids and all of a sudden a thread of nylon comes out. I mean, it's an interesting phenomenon, and there's an interesting phenomenon happening when you mix this feeling thing and this thinking thing. You pour these two things together and create consciousness. It's damn interesting. Alright, that's probably enough context video.